The Cavs lost to the Magic in preseason, but it's preseason, so how much does it matter? Figure it out. Talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. I am Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for his work on production. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, brother. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, Cavs Magic. Cleveland loses, had a long-running comeback to try to make this one a little bit more competitive, but did not work. Evan, your big takeaway from this is what?
The offensive approach is starting to really manifest a little bit in what JB Bickerstaff was preaching, at least, and also Kobe Altman, like during media day and just like training camp leading up to this. And you saw glimpses of it against Atlanta. And for those listening, you might have said like, oh, that's who they play, because I kept referring to who the Cavs played tonight as the Atlanta Hawks, as Chris and I were preparing to start. But you also saw it again against Orlando, just because in that game against Atlanta, like Amani Bates was not gun shy from three, neither was Sam Merrill, but like you saw more of it from Max Strus. Like you saw a lot of really high quality looks from him. Like sure, Donovan Mitchell didn't make a ton, but you saw a lot of high quality looks from him. And I asked JB Bickerstaff about it like post game a little bit, and he's like, these guys are now kind of learning how to play with actual space versus not having to play with space or having to play without space last year. So it might be a little bit of a stylistic change, but like you're starting to see the offense click a little bit, and it's been really fun just to kind of see like how this Cavs team can evolve, because there is a lot of potential here. It's just now how long do they kind of iron out some of the creases and kind of find that groove where they can just keep executing in the way they want to offensively.
Yeah, this was a kind of a sloppy preseason game. I mean, Darius Garland, who we'll talk about a bunch, was maybe the sharpest Cav by a wide margin. You know, this wasn't like a pristine Donovan Mitchell game. This was kind of a very much just like a we're figuring stuff out phase. But I think the offensive shout is the point. Evan, I can't help but watch these games, and watching Max Strus and George Niang in particular, and just watching how simply these guys shoot and let go of threes is unlike anyone the Cavs had last year. And there's other stuff going on. There's a play in particular we're going to talk about when we get to awards in segment 2 that I think really popped. But I just can't help but like, even with like there's no Jared Allen, it's just, hey, Max Strus plays 24 minutes, 7 of his 8 shots were threes. George Niang took 6 shots, 5 of them were threes. And their threes are just like catch it and fire. That dimension has just very simply and functionally, I think, just changed the way Cleveland's playing offense, at least based on this preseason game and the first one against Atlanta.
Yeah, it's really interesting just how those two are functioning. I think Dean Wade as well, especially in game 2 against Orlando. Like, it's not saying like the star players aren't stepping up, but I think people who are like, oh, Donovan Mitchell shot poorly, or like Darius Garland was the only guy who's really shown up of Cleveland's quote unquote stars so far. Like Evan Mobley's played fine, so shut up first off. But more than that, like the role players, I think just maybe finding their groove and finding out how to coexist off of this star talent, like early on, is much easier than having to do it on the fly during the regular season. Like I think back to last year where Dean Wade like definitely like just looked out of his element when he was sharing the floor with the starting lineup of like him, and then with Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen, like just did not look comfortable out there. And I think them all finding like that rhythm, whether it's from the perimeter and like just these mix and match lineups that Bickerstaff's been rolling out there with some of these star players, like it's going to just be beneficial, because I think with your stars, it's easier for them to figure it out versus like role players. Like when they have momentum heading into the regular season, it's just only going to be beneficial. And like, I mean, obviously like Max Strus is like a very high end role player just in terms of what he provides you in terms of 3-point shooting. And I think he would heat up even despite like a pretty ghastly series in the NBA finals at times. But this is just, yeah, the shooting stuff is encouraging. And like you said, like there's a reason why most of Strus's shots were 3-pointers, and just like George Niang is like exclusively like a guy who hovers around the perimeter. Like the Cavs are finding ways just to kind of make easier offensive decisions, and it's showing so far.
So the only injury news aside from Jared Allen is that Karis LeVert did not play in this game due to foot soreness. Damian Jones ended up stepping up in his place as starter. Didn't have any points, 11 minutes. Didn't have any rebounds either. So like a weird nothing burger from Damian Jones in his 11 minutes. Did any further insight, Evan, on if LeVert's injury is just precautionary? Like what's any updates on LeVert that came out from media?
No updates per se that came out from media. I did see that Chris Fedor from Cleveland.com noted that it's mostly precautionary. Serena Winters noted that it was a foot. And I think if you're the Cavs, it's just the right approach. Like you have to wonder, like with Jared Allen's bone bruise, if it was like a playoff game or like a more like do or die type of game, would he play through it? Or like in LeVert's case, more so like if this is a regular season game, there's possibly a chance he could be ramping up the play. But like the Cavs have this luxury of now about a week until the regular, or about a week and a half until the regular season kicks off. So if they can afford to rest their guys when they can, even at the expense of maybe losing reps within whatever they're trying to implement, you're willing to make that sacrifice, because I think those guys at least have the luxury of familiarity to kind of get themselves acclimated back into things.
Yeah, it's preseason games. Like Bradley Beal missed a game for Phoenix. Like you're just gonna have guys miss. I mean, Dame and Giannis haven't missed the first one. Their first game is gonna be against the Lakers this weekend. This is smart and wise. Obviously, you just hold guys precautionary. Even minute totals. This was the one where they go into the third a little bit with some of their main players. I mean, Mobley plays 22, Garland plays 17, Donovan Mitchell played 29, Max Strus played 24. Like you had guys actually playing some real minutes. That being said, there's still some funkiness. I mean, Tristan Thompson's out here checking in the first quarter. Like you still had some weirdness, and we'll talk about. I want to talk about Dean Wade later, but this is still very much, Evan. I think in total, just felt like a preseason game where the Cavs are figuring stuff out and messing around a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to that game against Atlanta earlier in the week, where like you're watching guys maybe like find their rhythm, find their cadence, kind of find their footing back on the floor, because they've been playing pickup with their teammates or like doing like runs with their friends and stuff that they obviously play professionally with. But like Isaac Okoro told me the other day, like it's beneficial for the fact that the Cavs can now kind of face different opponents, and it does give them different wrinkles and things to kind of look at offensively and defensively. But it's a ramp up process. Like expecting guys to be fully ready and raring to go in a game that doesn't count is pretty foolhardy. And when the games actually count, like it's going to be a lot less sloppy.
All right, coming up next, Game Awards. If you're tuning in for the first time, or maybe not for the first time in a while, we go MVP, stat of the night, and play of the night. So we'll talk about that coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Right now, new customers can get $200 at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and that's in bonus bets. That is guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Again, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, with a $5 bet. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Right now, they have a ton of obviously great NFL stuff, but they also have NBA futures of all kinds featured on the Cleveland Cavaliers, NBA as a whole, awards, division winners, all of that stuff you can find at FanDuel. Right now, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And again, the official sportsbook of Locked On. All right, back here, Locked On Cavs, Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell with you. Awards. I mean, I think it has to be Darius Garland. I thought watching him be aggressive as a scorer, watching his control on the game, watching how he really filled the vacuum in a preseason game, albeit, but Donovan Mitchell didn't have a particularly good shooting night, wasn't particularly on. Darius Garland was, by far, I think, the best player for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, I mean, you can give an honorable mention to Emoni Bates or even Dean Wade, who are really effective for Cleveland off the bench, especially just from three-point shooting stuff. But like in terms of just the best player on the floor when he was playing, it was Darius Garland. Like hyper efficient, was looking very much like Darius was ready for the regular season at this point. I do wonder if like maybe the Cavs don't play him Monday and let him play Friday just to keep him fresh heading into the regular season, just because like he didn't play the second half while the starters did. But like, yeah, no, Garland was phenomenal tonight. Like was key in so many different plays. In fact, was the recipient of my play of the night.
So, all right, let's go to play of the night. So you go first. I think you have a simpler one than I do.
So it was Donovan Mitchell, like at the elbow, like he was posting up and then just had like a no look behind the back pass to a cutting Darius Garland along the baseline, and Garland got a pretty simple layup. And then it's just, I don't know, it was a fun play. Like it was fun to watch in person. It was even more fun to watch like the slow-mo feed of it. I really hope the NBA implements what the Falcons rather do with Bijan Robinson, start doing like aerial views of some of these passes, because I'd love to watch like the cutting like from like an isolated spot, then the pass happen. But yeah, it was a cool play. But let me hear about yours, because I think yours is simple, but I think you're gonna get a little bit more technical on why it was more significant, and I want to hear about it.
Yeah. So what the Cavs I think their first offense play of the game ran a play where Max Strus ended up in the short roll. Max Strus ends up being in a spot where he is the roll guy. This was their first field goal of the game, not the first possession. Strus rolls, Mobley passes to him, and Darius Garland relocated to the corner for a corner three. That's the ends up being the Cavs' first bucket of the game. This is not anything overly complex. Donovan Mitchell's standing there. Damian Jones is hanging out the dunker spot, but also ends up being in position to set a screen for Darius. But what this signals to me, Evan, is just further evolution. Like this was Evan Mobley does the first quick pass to Strus could either go to the rim there, or Darius Garland's particularly clearing out to shoot to be there for a corner three. This is designed to let Darius score. This is not just saying, hey, Darius, stand around and do stuff. This is also using Max Strus to the maximum of his capabilities, pun intended. This is someone who, yes, will shoot threes, all of that stuff, but he also is going to do some creation and secondary passing for you. He knows how to play in the system. This is the kind of set that it's not overly complex. It's just, okay, Darius Garland's going to get a back screen set for him, run to the corner. Strus is going to be in the short roll. Mobley, as the hub, is going to get to make a decision here because we trust his playmaking. It is just the kind of design that the Cavs did not always have last year, and I think it's really the kind of the thing you're going to see with the shooting added in and with a more elevated motion-based offense.
So Steve Jones pointed this out the other day of just like Max Strus hitting a pretty big three-pointer, like at least within the flow of Cleveland's offense against Atlanta. And I saw it pop across my timeline, and then that play happened. And I'm just like, yeah, and you watch how Max Strus played in his pretty heavy minutes for the Cavs. He ended up the night with about 25 minutes or so, but was super effective in that run, whether it was in terms of playmaking, he technically flirted the triple-double with 13, 6, and 5, but was really kind of an interesting foil for Cleveland. And he's, I mentioned, post-game, JB Bickerstaff said, he is part of this evolution for Cleveland, where the guys that were here last year now have a lot more space to operate and work with, and it makes things harder for defenses when you have a guy like Max Strus who's always moving and finding pretty easy and clean looks from the perimeter and benefiting from his passing of his teammates. Yeah, this is a good play. And I think just it gives me that shades of when Ty Lue was coaching the Big Three Cavs, and they always ran a set play to try and get Kevin Love a 3-pointer to start the game. Maybe if that becomes the Cavs new bread and butter, just to kind of build a momentum, just to have volume shooter like Strus just see the ball go in the basket right away, that could just unlock things for the Cavs pretty quickly on offense.
Even just I think we saw some of the Mobley stuff the other day. I think the biggest thing here, Evan, is with Garland to some degree, because using Garland, who is a very good shooter, I think has motion shooting in his game that hasn't been fully tapped into. Getting him on the move and getting him relocated it's going to stretch out the defense. At some point, they're going to run this exact same play, and instead of Darius Garland getting a corner three, Donovan Mitchell's either going to get a corner three or get to cut into the lane and dunk on someone's head. They're giving themselves option, and by using Darius Garland as this tool, by just entrusting the rest of the structure, you're going to put Allen in the Jones spot, and you can run this exact same set, zero problems. You're just creating more challenges for the defense, and Darius Garland on the move, coming off of screens, you're going to trust him to make the right shot, to take the right shot if it's open like this, to create if he needs to. I mean, he gets that ball there, there's no shot. He can just move it right into a pick and roll with Damian Jones. You're building in all of these options, and it just makes sense. And this is, again, the way the coaching staff here has put the pieces on the chessboard in this way. It just looks so much more elevated and clean, and the shooting is, I think, the big reason why. Stat of the night, mine's very simple. It's about Darius Garland once again here. So Darius Garland, 50% of his shots were threes. Last year, per cleaning the glass. 33% of his shots were from three. I don't know if this is going to hold every game. I don't know if he's going to be like a plus 40% from three guy. He actually even left one on the table in this game because he had it open three, passed it up, he dribbled in, thinking he was going to get a roll, and then instead he got like a long two that he made. But I was like, Darius, you could have just had the three from the start, my guy. But over 50% of his shots, even so, were 50%. 50% of his shots were from three. If he does that, or is like 40, which is that as a rookie, to like 45%, that's such a meaningful change in how Darius Garland attacks on offense, I think. And it would make him just that much more dangerous.
You know what? I think we got to tip our cap to friend of the program, Carter Rodriguez, who during Cavs Media Day coerced Darius Garland into taking more pointers this season. And to your point, he could have taken more. And that's me. And I think Carter as well, saying like if Garland could be more self three times, it'd be great. But like he's not wired that way. But like to your point, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, and then he was 4 of 6 outside of 3-point attempts, and then he was 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Like he was hyper efficient in his 17 minutes of play. And like you said, like if he is able to benefit from just the pressure that Max Strus alleviates that he might face, or even having Donovan Mitchell on the floor with him, or George Niang, or just any of the shooting options the Cavs kind of now have within their offensive system, it's going to make Garland's life a lot easier, and it can play to the strengths of the fact that he is a good movement shooter. He is a guard who has become accustomed to playing off the ball and just kind of playing within the movement of a shooting offense. And yeah, he is going to really benefit from it well, and it's going to be excited to see when things really start to click in the regular season, like how much different Garland's game will look and benefit from this new offensive approach by Cleveland.
What is your stat?
Cleveland, 55% of their shot attempts were 3-pointers. Curious to see, based on what like internal metrics the Cavs had on the table, like JB Bickerstaff said pregame that like the massive amount of 3-pointers they took against Atlanta on Tuesday, a lot of them came off of passes or assists and everything like that. And like they said, like on paper, like the Cavs left about 12 more on the table. So these numbers aren't realistic, I think, on a game-to-game basis. I think this one, certainly, like in the first half, like the numbers that the Cavs are shooting 3-point wise, like it made sense. And maybe like that's more so like them coming back down to reality. And like they're not going to be something 48, 53s a night. But like the fact that there's just like a sudden sense of urgency and like just desire to take instead of just like attacking on the interior and maybe roughing things up inside and just relying at attempts at the free throw line is a welcome change to Cleveland offensively, and I very much welcome it.
All right, coming up next, miscellaneous thoughts. We're going to open up by talking about Dean Wade and what he's looked like so far. All right, we're back here, Locked On Cavs. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell with you. Dean Wade, Evan, I thought looked really good in this game. You noted the other day that he doesn't have the shooting thing on his shoulder anymore. He played a little more in this game, came in earlier than he did, perhaps because LeVert was out. But if Dean Wade can be healthy and have more games akin to this and everything, that's a really, really, I think, big deal for Cleveland, and it'd be a good thing for Dean considering his injury issues. But this is the kind of game where you look at it and you think, okay, he played 20 minutes, was 4 or 6 from 3. That's obviously a little above water, but if he can come in and get that many threes up and have 6 rebounds, like that's a guy I want to see playing consistent minutes this year.
Yeah, and JB was asked about this post game. Like, it's when Dean Wade is playing like this, like you can't not have him on the floor. And like I think he being able to be a little bit more versatile, being able to play 3 through 5, and not having to deal with maybe some of the overlap that George Niang provides as well. Like it's going to make things better for the Cavs. And Wade was asked about it post game, like how is he feeling physically? He's like, this is the best he's felt since he suffered the shoulder injury. And so like I think he is back, and like the confidence wise, like he's back. I think physically he's feeling right, and having the time off is probably very beneficial for Wade. And hopefully at least we get more of what we saw from Dean Wade before the shoulder injury, that like he is a guy who can come off the bench and, as he said, provide you rebounding, size, and just most importantly 3-point shooting from the position, and just kind of unlock things for the Cavs even more offensively. Because like you have like 4-out lineups next to Evan Mobley at times, or Jared Allen, or even Damian Jones if you want to get real weird with it. Like, it's just going to make things so much easier for everyone on the floor on offense. And also, you don't have to expend as much energy on defense on possessions because maybe you're able to extend the lead with your 3-point shooting, and Wade could be a huge part of that.
All right, moving on. Isaac Okoro, I thought, again, had another interesting game. He's being put in positions to pass a little bit. Still sometimes in the corners. Didn't hit a three in this game. Only had a couple hit a drive that I really liked that got stuffed by Jonathan Isaac. But I did, Evan, again, just like how he played. I think this is, again, someone who's telling you that, like, okay, I can do something within this new structure. It seems to have benefited him. I think the spacing has benefited him. I've really liked the 2 games of preseason Okoro so far. Yeah,
Okoro's game has been interesting because like game 1 really looked more comfortable offensively and like much more fluid in terms of just shooting and like working within what the defense was giving him, and also just the looks he got from the Cavs offensive flow itself. Like, I asked him about this, like, did they have any set plays they ran for him against Atlanta? He's like, no, it was just the flow of the offense and taking what the defense was giving me. So like, it was just him taking advantage of maybe more movement and things like that. And against Orlando was a little bit of a weird inverse, and maybe it was schematic and just how Orlando is just like a freakishly long team and like athletic as well. But like, you saw Okoro sitting in the corner a lot, like not doing a lot of movement, not really doing slashing or cutting and things like that. But like you said, like at least was able to complement the Cavs offensively when he wasn't able to get his shot to go down, because especially when he had a full set of steam and he was running downhill, like he was looking for his teammates. Like there was 2 really great passes in a row he made in the third quarter where he hits Evan Mobley, who was posting up, and Mobley hits a turnaround jumper over, I believe, Wendell Carter Jr. And then immediately after that, like he has a slip pass to Mobley, who does like a light screen and rolls to the basket. And Okoro at least has the vision to make that simple of a pass. And you think about how like Ricky Rubio is not here, and like there's not like a true backup point guard behind Darius Garland. But if they're able to cobble together playmaking by committee from like obviously Mitchell, LeVert as well. I think Jerome is in this conversation, but like Okoro is kind of in there too now too. If his vision is able to execute well offensively and just kind of keep things flowing well, especially when there's just like a lack of ball handling whenever Garland sits.
Any other final thoughts from this game, Evan, before we get out here? What else popped?
I was pleasantly surprised after the Cavs went big with Evan Mobley and Damian Jones together to see JB Bickerstaff pull the plug on going big pretty quickly. Like Jones played 10 minutes. He hardly played in the first half at all, I think. He actually played 10 minutes the first half. He didn't play in the second half at all. But either way, like you saw them pull the plug early into the first quarter on it, and you saw the Cavs sub in Okoro for Jones, and then they went to a smaller lineup, which it was like Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Okoro, and Mobley. And you're like, okay, there's 3 shooters in Mobley out there who can use a little bit more of his playmaking chops, and then you have like Okoro, who's a really strong point of attack defender. Like, it's just at least nice to see JB's not going to be like a creature of habit, and he is trying new things on offense just to kind of unlock things more palatable to watch for us, and also just easier for his team when they're on the floor too. And like, yeah, bravo. Like the Cavs leaned on being big quite a bit last year, and I think having that fluidity and versatility to go between small and big and just use average lineups as well it's a nice development to see the Cavs have.
Yeah, I think the shooting has just been it's been the story of the preseason. And last thing I think is just Emoni Bates. Congratulations, Emoni Bates. You are getting up all of the threes possible, and I love that he's just out there shooting a shot literally.
Yeah, I mean, like, no fear. He said post game like he's still trying to find his footing, and I think figure out when he can or cannot take those shot attempts just because he doesn't want to be detrimental to his team. But Bates played really well. Honestly surprised like the Cavs didn't try to find him in the closing moments of the game to see if he could send it to overtime. But yeah, like just was again like a spark plug off the bench for the Cavs in the limited minutes he got in 2 fourth quarters in a row now. And someone in the comments after the Hawks episode said we didn't give him enough flowers, but like he was great tonight, and it's going to take time for him to grow and develop. But like these are a lot of good confidence boosters for the Cavs and also for Bates just heading into his first season in the NBA.
Yeah, he's a two-way guy who I don't think is going to play a real role in this team this year unless something bad happens. I think he's definitely a project, but good for him, I think, on a really good first 2 preseason games. And he's going to get a chance to showcase a ton of this in the G League. And I think that's going to be, I think, maybe definitely one of the more fun storylines, to follow there with the Cleveland Charge this year. All right. Back at you after the weekend. Have a good one, everyone. More player previews coming for you Monday. Talk to you next week.